Hello, welcome. I'm glad that you're here with us today as we continue on our journey through the Bible chronologically. Today, we're going to read a handful of Psalms, actually five to be exact. These Psalms all speak to the time that David is fleeing from Saul and his army. So, David's life while he's on the lam, I guess we can say. You're gonna hear in these Psalms how David trusts in God to preserve him and how he's patient for God to deal with things, even exact vengeance according to God's own will and God's own timing. David's patience before the Lord, well, it's absolutely amazing. And it serves as an example for us. What a blessing that God has preserved these Psalms for us to guide us as we submit to his will and his timing in the trials and tribulations of our own lives. So we'll start out with Psalm 7. As you read Psalm 7, notice how the writer appeals to God to do something, the writer being David, appeals to God to do something about the unjust persecution he's enduring. I mean, David didn't deserve to be chased around by Saul like this. He's confident of his innocence, especially with respect to those who are pursuing him. Yet he does not seek to exact vengeance himself. Rather, he calls on the Lord to bring justice. Ultimately, David relies on God to be his shield, as he notes that the evil are consumed by their own mischief. David is left to give thanks to God and to praise him. And note, he's giving thanks to God and praising him even in the midst of this persecution. Now, think of David on the lam in the wilderness, pursued at every turn by one whose whole desire is to put him to death. In Psalm 27, our second psalm for the day, we hear the words of one who, faced with such a difficult existence, returns to those things that he learned in his youth about God to reassure himself and to give himself the confidence to go on. The Lord is my light and my salvation, he says, my stronghold. He will protect me from my enemies. His house is my desire. Be strong and wait on the Lord. These words encourage us, encourage David and encourage us when we are undergoing trial and tribulation. They sustain us just as they sustained David as he fled and evaded Saul for so many years. Now, as you read Psalm 31, maybe you'll sense this now but not yet struggle that David is having as he waits for God to establish him as king of Israel. I mean, David was anointed king of Israel years before, but he still struggles as he flees constantly from the one anointed as king before him, in other words, Saul. David has been saved by God, but then again, he hasn't. He's still fleeing. He has received victory from God, but then again, he hasn't. Is this not the same life that we lead? I mean, we're justified before God, right? And yet we sin daily. We have God's peace, and yet strife, even strife, especially strife for Jesus' sake, is our constant companion. To some, David may sound confused in the psalm, but to we who live the same thing, he's simply giving expression to the tension that we experience every day in the now but not yet reality we live in as redeemed children of God, waiting for Jesus' return. Psalm 34. Well, Psalm 34 celebrates the escape that God gave David from Abimelech, king of Gath. As David realizes that his advisors, the king's advisors, were a threat to him. So in order to get himself out of the situation, David feigns insanity to safely take his leave. The miracles that God has and continues to work for David, God also works in your life. Are you able to see them? Can you see when God has answered you, when God has rescued you, when God has redeemed you? As you read this psalm, remember that what God has done for David, he does for you and all believers as well. Do you recall from our recent reading how Doeg, the Edomite, betrayed Ahimelech, the high priest Ahimelech and his family, and then even more killed not only Ahimelech and the other priests, but all of the people in the town, the women and the children, the animals, everything. David laments that someone would actually boast of such evil, that they would joy in such destruction. God will surely visit evildoers with his vengeance. The righteous find their boast in the house of God, and they find their joy in a steadfast love. So David and we give thanks, give God thanks and praise as we wait on him with those who put their trust in him. Well, as always, I pray that that these readings are helping you to grow and to learn, especially now that we're starting to do a number of these psalms. I hope that where you see the things that David is talking about being relevant in your life, that you're able to take comfort and peace from the words that David writes to comfort himself, to express the comfort that he himself has been given, that they would be a comfort to you as well. May God be with you and bless you. Look forward to gathering with you the next time.